Sam Cooper, you are an investigative journalist. You're a freelance investigative journalist in the sense that you've gone and created your own media outlet. Tell me, what does a day in your life look like now? Like, what does your job actually comprise, and how do you go about, producing something for the hours that you put in?
Yeah, well, to me, it's been a very organic progression from working in mainstream, the usual media for 17 years, starting with Post Media. Going into global news was very helpful in that I learned some of the TV chops. I learned a lot about broadcast. Any story I did for the global news was on multiple platforms. Sometimes I was on TV myself. I would be talking to our, great radio hosts across the nation. And so really, I do think that took me from being a print-only journalist into a multi-platform journalist, where I understood, I think, how to disseminate stories, how it's not just about writing a story now, it's also about talking about a story with great interviewers and podcast hosts, radio hosts. And so what I'm learning is that, of course, job one is doing the brand of investigative journalism, the brand of sort of the stuff that is very similar to what I wrote in Willful Blindness. Now, if I want to do a 5,000 word story, there would be no editor telling me you can't do that. And I had been hearing for years that, people that own Bloomberg terminals, people that run hedge funds, people in other countries like it when they read a long Sam Cooper narrative. So now I'm the one that decides, what to write. It's really the same topics, but it might be at the length or the style of narrative that I choose. And so I'll make the decisions around lawyer vetting, legal risk exposure, and that's how my day has changed. It's also there's a lot to do with brand building. This is now, a new digital platform. I just this morning announced on Twitter, of course, social media is a big part of my day. I announced on Twitter that I'm coming to, it looks like making a deal with John McComb, the former legendary CKNW host. We'll be working together on a podcast for the Bureau. So again, if I had to, reiterate, it's about job one is the journalism, but I also have to be thinking about how my brand of journalism is interacting with others and doing interviews about the stories that I write, and also, the business ideas that I'm involved in.
So is your day more complex now than it was when you were solely focused on the journalistic work?
I wouldn't really say so. I would say that what I can say for sure is my day is busier. It's more structured because there's not a minute to waste. And I think that would make a lot of sense when people say you do something entrepreneurial. Now you're a 7-day a week employee. To an extent, that's true. But also, if I have produced, let's say, 150% of what I decided I wanted to in a week, and it's now Friday afternoon, I can just say, okay, computer's off. I'm going for a long bike ride, and that'll benefit myself, my business, and my family if I can make those decisions now.
Do you find that your level of enthusiasm about launching yourself into the day has increased now that you are your own boss?
Yes. This is now sink or swim, right? When I wake up in the morning, not only do I, love being the one that strategically decides what I'm going to do. And no, this is not a comment on working with great teams. It's just that necessarily when you're working with a team, everyone has their own, life and job. And so decisions take a while to circulate. Now I'll be the one that decides who do I need to go to, either involve in this project or bounce an idea off. And so, I'm going to do it like that. And that drives me from when I wake up. And again, when I put a story out, I have a very clear idea of the metrics of how it's doing. And so very clearly, both for the brand, for the public interest, and financially, these are the three considerations that I have, my hands are on so directly now that is very motivating.
Well, you touch on the financial aspect because there is no big organization or ad salespeople out there supporting what you're doing. How much of that has become a part of your day, thinking about how am I going to generate the revenue that I need to keep going?
Well, I'm only 30 days into this, but I can say that, I had some level of good confidence that for years, people were saying, we love what you did in your book. It's a different type of journalism. The depth there is something that, you can't do in daily journalism. And frankly, we're not seeing that very much in daily journalism anymore. So I do have, a little bit of a cushion to people that contributed a bit financially, mostly for philanthropic reasons, because they believe my brand of journalism, is needed in Canada. And they want me to try to bring in other journalists and branch out. And so that is there, but it's not at this point, advertising's not involved at all. So I just think that's the way the business is going. You could say that it's becoming fractured, but it's also becoming that the readers or the listeners, they're making the decision who they will subscribe to. And so it's very much subscription driven. And there are stories that I'll need to do for public interest reasons that won't be quite as they might not be right on the front end as financially viable, but I need to do them because public interest journalism is what drives me. And just to extend the answer, I mean, at the other side of that, very clearly, if I don't meet, if I don't have a certain amount of subscribers within a few years, paying, not just reading for free, then it won't be a viable model. And I'll have to go back to the drawing board. But I can tell you that in the first 30 days, I have exceeded my expectations. It's going very well.
So let's go back to the beginning of your career, or even before that. At what point in your life did you decide this is what I want to pursue? And what were some of the influences that led you in that direction?
Well, I went to the University of Toronto with the idea of doing what they called like a pre-law degree. So I was thinking going to law school, and I did English, philosophy, and history, sort of what could get me into law school, logic courses. And that was going fine, but I always loved reading, Hemingway, Orwell, narrative nonfiction, always been a huge sort of history buff, English buff. And so at some level, I would say even back in high school or before, I thought writing could be a career for me. I didn't just jump into journalism school, right after high school. I did my undergrad at U of T, and then I found that I sort of soured on law a little bit. I did my thing of traveling the world a little bit, went to Japan, did a lot of snowboarding in British Columbia. And at a certain point, it was after coming back from Japan, I decided to enroll into journalism school. Again, all I knew was that I was a very, avid reader. When people, just in your daily conversations, when you're talking to people, they're nodding, maybe he's got something to say. And so I had reasonable confidence, did well in Langara, got a job at a community newspaper. Very soon after, was up at the Vancouver province. And journalism has really been my only professional love since then, or there else that I ever thought serious about, except school and being a lawyer.
I like to tell people that my enthusiasm for journalism started because I like sticking my nose in other people's business and then telling everyone about it. You obviously have some of that same enthusiasm.
There's definitely that side. I can. It's funny you say that because I can even remember in grade school, sometimes I would, people, the teacher says, "How was your weekend?" and people would stand up and do their little narrative. And I actually liked standing up and explaining, and you could tell that people are listening. They're not just like, So that is a commonality, I think, for probably a lot of us. Also competitive. Journalists are very competitive people.
Yes. So for a young person who might be watching this right now and they go, well, I want to be the next Sam Cooper, what do you think are the personality traits that are essential for somebody to be able to pursue and have success in a career like yours?
Well, again, in fact, I have just mentored a youngish lawyer who in the Toronto area who grew up reading the New Yorker. I'll tell a little bit about his story without saying his name. And he just, I found, was interested in very detailed reporting. And I told him, look, if you're thinking there's ever going to be more money in this than going down the line of what you're doing now, being a lawyer, probably you should think about that again. And he said, no, this is a passion. I think this is what I want to do. So really, that's the key. You should be the type of person that you can't read enough. You're always reading widely. Further than that, as we've kind of discussed, you've got the personality where you want to tell other people about what you're reading. You have views, but you're also a balanced thinker. You like writing. If you have those traits and you do well in subjects like history, philosophy, English, the humanities, you can you can find a course and just go to school for a year and get a journalism job. Having said that, it's going to be tough. I'm doing my own thing now for a very clear reason. And that's because for about 5 years, I've been sensing the way the business is fracturing. And I've been finding, this leads me to another piece of advice. You're eventually going to need to be your own brand. You can't just be, X reporter at Y institution, because there's an AI bot that's going to be able to do your job. If you don't have, a real, let's just say, it takes some courage to put yourself out there and report facts. And when you get to a high experience level, actually make assertions, conclusions. This is, to me, the highest level journalism. If you want to do those things, it can be viable.
It's a great career, and thanks for sharing or giving us a little bit of insight into what your life is like.
My pleasure.